Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the high-stakes political chessboard in Brazil. We're going to break down the power plays that are shaping the country's future, all based on a recent analysis from Revista Oeste. And let me tell you, it's a really complex game with some incredibly powerful players.
So, the source material kicks things off with this really central question. It frames this entire political landscape as a battle for influence. And the idea is, if you really want to understand the game, you first have to ask, who's footing the bill for the story you're being told?
And this slide lays out the core argument perfectly. On one hand, you've got the old guard, traditional media, that's long dependent on government money and big corporate ads. On the other hand, you have independent media, which gets its funding directly from subscribers. This financial split, the source argues, is really at the heart of who gets to speak freely and who doesn't.
Okay, so let's get into it. With the board set, we can really start to see the key players and, the simmering tensions between them. And this isn't just about politicians anymore. We're talking about the institutions they wield and the huge financial pressures that are in play.
Now check out this number, because it's a big one. A 20 billion real drop in advertising revenue for traditional media just over the last 10 years. According to the source, that financial squeeze is what's making these outlets more and more dependent on public funds and, well, by extension, on whoever's in power.
And here's where we see the first major conflict on the board. This is a direct showdown between two of Brazil's most powerful institutions. One branch of government makes a bold move, and it triggers an immediate, and I mean forceful reaction from the other.
So what exactly was the move? The source points a finger directly at Supreme Court Justice Gilmar Mendes. Apparently, in a unilateral decision, he ruled that only the Prosecutor General can kick off impeachment proceedings against Supreme Court ministers. This effectively strips a key power away from Congress, and as you can imagine, that lit the fuse for this whole conflict.
And you can bet Congress did not just sit back and take that. Their reaction was swift and it was strategic. They're lining up a whole series of legislative countermoves to try and reclaim what they see as their constitutional authority. We're talking about everything from term reviews for justices to fast-tracking a brand new impeachment law.
This quote from the source, wow! It really captures just how serious the situation has become. The feeling is that these clashes aren't just your typical political bickering. No, they represent a deep, fundamental crisis. So much so that some commentators are calling it a state of exception. Basically, a situation where the normal rules of law just don't seem to apply anymore. All right, so let's move to the next phase of this game. Because with all that institutional drama as the backdrop, the focus is already pivoting to the next big thing, the 2026 presidential election.
And boom! Here is the move that changes everything. From prison, former President Jair Bolsonaro names his son, Senator Flavio Bolsonaro, as his political heir for the 2026 race. The strategy here seems pretty clear. Unify his massive political base around one single candidate and do it early.
So what happened right after that announcement? The ripple effects were immediate, and you can see them laid out right here. The family and their party, they showed unified support right away. But the financial markets, they didn't like it. The stock market actually dropped. Meanwhile, the powerful political center, the Central, started to pivot, and other right-wing leaders, well, they took a more cautious, wait-and-see approach.
So, here's the crucial thing to understand. This isn't just one single conflict. It's more like a multi-front war. You've got several interconnected battles playing out all at once, which makes predicting Brazil's next move, well, incredibly difficult.
The source material really paints a picture of a perfect storm here. These crises are all happening at the same time, and they're all feeding into each other. You've got the institutional war between the courts and Congress, new questions popping up about foreign policy, fresh corruption scandals, and the early start to an already super polarized election. It's a lot.
Now, here's a really fascinating twist that the analysis brings up. This debate around a possible broad amnesty. Now, you often hear about it in the context of political prisoners, but some commentators are arguing that an amnesty would actually benefit the Supreme Court justices themselves the most, to sort of shield them from any accountability for their actions during this so-called period of exception.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? These aren't just a bunch of random, isolated events. The source presents them as symptoms of a much bigger struggle. A struggle over the fundamental rules of democracy and the balance of power in Brazil, which is setting the stage for a very, very turbulent couple of years.
So as this incredibly complicated match unfolds, with all its checks and counterchecks, the ultimate question is just hanging there. What direction is the country actually going to take? The board is set, the pieces are in motion, and all we can really do now is watch to see what happens next.